And we are live. Can you hear me? Just let me know in the comments. I am, man, y'all are getting it. Y'all are going to get it real tonight. Oh, just a second. Y'all are going to get it real tonight. I am so nervous. I don't think I've ever been this nervous for a video or a live stream before, just because going away for a month and then coming back, I'm so nervous, so nervous, but I'm sure that it will pass. And that's one reason why I decided to do this in the middle of the night, because it's like, well, most of my audience will be asleep, and the ones that aren't, they're probably drunk or something. No, I'm joking. I have a lot of European viewers, I know, and some viewers in Asia, so there's a time zone difference too. But what's up, Lisa? Lisa, do let me know though if you can hear me. So, what's up, AJ? Trish says, "Don't be nervous." So, yeah, it has been over a month. I looked at my YouTube statistics and it said 36, 37 days since my last video. And I didn't know it had been that long until I looked at it. I knew it had been a few weeks. And thank you, AJ. Said you're looking so good. Miss Penelope says hello from London. I know I said I wasn't going to read the chats, but that's mostly just a kind of a disclaimer so people don't feel like they're they've been bait and switched there. I have a birthday coming up in a few days, September 2nd. Virgo here. So I will do a proper stream and we'll respond to a lot more chats and read super chats and stuff. I mean, if you do a super chat, I'll read it, but I'll be a lot more involved in the conversation in a few days. But this is really just to get my feet in the water again, and also to get some material down for some of the videos that I'm going to be putting out in the next few days. Now, I have filmed a lot of material as well for these videos, but they're lacking some commentary and so forth. So I'm going to be taking parts of this. And also, of course, I need to explain to my general audience where I have been. I have never taken a break this long. I have been doing this for almost 5 years, YouTube and social media stuff. Been doing it for almost 5 years. Hey, Laura B, what is up? One of my mods here did not let my mods or anyone know I was doing this, so she might be the only one that shows up. No problem. Thanks to my other mods though, AJ Stone and Rebel Bird and Vanessa, of course, but also Laura B. And so I have, was just on Megyn Kelly. Some interesting synchronicity here. If you want to talk about Jungian synchronicity, about not only being on Megyn Kelly's show, her showing a clip from my show and mentioning me, but also the content of that. So I'll talk about that more in a little while. But this is the longest break that I've taken in the almost 5 years that I've been doing this, and it was not intentional. And so I just kind of want to explain what happened, and then we'll go from there. I also want to talk about just where I'm at with the whole Blake Lively thing, and then also Marilyn Manson. My God, there is some fascinating stuff. What a time for me to drop out, unfortunately, because there has been so much fascinating stuff. I was on the Marilyn Manson, Facebook board. It's called the Marilyn Manson Cult. And someone mentioned, or someone asked a question posted on there, where's Kurtz? Haven't heard from her lately. And someone said, well, there's really no news for her to grift on. So she's been, she's been quiet. There's been a ton of news for me to grift on. What are you talking about? A ton. And it's unfortunate that I have been AWOL, if we want to use the army metaphors, take them a little bit further. It's unfortunate that I've been AWOL, but I'm going to try to make up for it, because there's been huge news with the Marilyn Manson stuff. Huge, like bigger than I could have even asked for, honestly. So I'm going to talk about that too in a little while. But anyway, first things first, where have I been? So you're going to get, again, you guys are getting me, you're lucky or unlucky or whatever. You're going to get me about as raw and real as you can get tonight in this late night stream. And I'm sure that I'm going to end up cutting a lot of this from the business. This video is not going to stay up. And that's not to say that I don't realize that people can be clipping stuff that, like, yes, I know it's not going to be like erased forever, whatever. But the point is, most of this is not going to make the final cut on my channel. But I'm telling you all this tonight. And so anyway, this is what happened. Is my boyfriend, partner, sometimes I call him husband, whatever term you want to use. We've been together 16 years, lived together. We did break up briefly for a little while, and he initiated it, but it was one of those things where it was precipitated by a lot of like obvious unhappiness on my part and stuff. So it wasn't one of those things where, it was like unexpected, right? But we had a breakup for like 2 days, as these things often happen. 2 days, and then we finally sat down and communicated, which had been a long time coming. It had been many, many months, many moons since we had actually communicated, and it's my fault. For someone who talks a lot on YouTube, I'm not very good about interpersonal relationships. I'm just not. And so we talked about a lot of stuff, hashed things out, and we're in a really great place now, and much better than before we had this hiccup. And it wasn't over YouTube or anything like that. I mean, the only thing I'll say is that I had thought for a while that he was that Dustin is his name. And again, I'm probably going to cut out most of this when I end up posting. But I had thought for a while that he was resentful of the YouTube stuff that I do, the social media stuff that I do, and it really turns out that no, he wasn't. He was just displeased with the fact that I seem to have no time for him anymore. So, it's one of those things. It's kind of like when a couple has a child, and then all of a sudden the child has, takes up all the attention and there's no time anymore for the relationship. Well, what I didn't realize was that although I did not have a child, birthing this YouTube social media thing has really become the central focus lately of my life. And so he was feeling rightfully in a number of ways neglected. And so we really hashed that out. And I think I'm in a place now where I feel like I can go forward with the YouTube and the social media stuff, but also be mindful of the fact that I've got to tend to this relationship if it means something to me, right? And that wasn't all it was about. There's a lot of other stuff, and you know how things are in relationships. Like there's just a lot that builds up. So what happened was though, over a month ago, I'm sorry, I'm getting over a cold or something too. We broke up for a little while, but when we broke up, I stopped doing the YouTube and the social media because I didn't feel like it, obviously. And then even when we got back together and things were good in that department, I found that I could just not do the YouTube anymore or the social media anymore. Like it was almost like a kind of writer's block. I guess you call it YouTube block or influencer block. I hate that term influencer because God knows that I should not be a role model for anyone. But I guess influencer in the sense of like trying to influence people to not go along with Me Too hoaxes. But anyway, I found that I could just not make myself go back to it. And it was a few days, and then a few days turned into a week, and then a week turned into 2 weeks and 3 weeks and 4 weeks. And this is really the first time that I have been able to make myself sit down and do this. I've had so many aborted attempts for like the last 2 weeks. I've tried to sit down and make a video like this, and I've just not been able to. And so I think that what's been going on is that I really needed a break to after 5 years, to ask myself, okay, is this still working for me? Is this still what I want to do? Where am I in my life? I mean, we all have to do these things, whether you do YouTube or not, whatever. And so I think that basically what was going on is my brain was not letting me pick this up again, this YouTube and social media stuff, until I had come to terms with some things. Because when I started this almost 5 years ago, I thought that it would take me years and years to even get monetized, to even get 1,000 followers. And so I just thought that it would be like strictly just a meaningless hobby for years and years. And so it's not like I blew up, but doing the Johnny Depp, covering the Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing, it did bring me a lot more followers and subscribers than I had expected. And not so much about me, it's just that it was a really popular topic. And so you get sucked into doing something, and then you just stay on that ride, so to speak. And so this breakup kind of allowed me, like gave me an opportunity to sort of get off the ride for a little while. And I didn't do it in the best way. I did ghost a lot of people, and I'm sorry. I just couldn't make myself like get online and like talk to people and engage in with comments and DMs and stuff. I just needed a break from it. And also there's other stuff that I don't want to talk about going on with like family members and health challenges. And there's been a lot of drama, but I don't want to get into that. But anyway, point is, I just couldn't make myself do it or didn't feel like doing it, want to do it until just recently. And so I think the fact that I'm now wanting to do it, feel a desire to do it, it's a good sign that like I'm ready to get back in. The other thing is that I did not expect my life to become so consumed with Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni. Like it was different with the Johnny Depp thing, first of all, because I knew going into that was gonna be a major thing I was gonna spend a lot of time covering. And then with the Marilyn Manson thing, I was one of a very few number of people online covering that and promoting the idea of his innocence, and so I felt like that was a real, like, calling and a mission and something that I needed to stick with. The Baldoni Lively thing, I thought just initially it was just gonna be a few videos, and of course, what happened is so many people were interested that it really took on a life of its own, but I kinda had to stop and ask myself, "How much longer do I wanna keep covering this?" And I don't mean that in some kind of, like, egotistical way, like, "How much longer am I going to deign to give Justin Baldoni of my precious time?" It's nothing like that, and there are a ton of people covering it too, so it's not even like I'm needed per se. But I just had to ask myself and think about how much more I want to cover this. It's obviously really good for the algorithm. It obviously brings in a lot of views and helps my channel and stuff, but I'd never really stopped and asked myself if I wanted to devote more than, a half a year of my life to this. And so I've been thinking about that as well. And I have to be honest too, I was really demoralized by the verdict, against Baldoni, the dismissal of his lawsuit or most of his lawsuit. I expected it to happen. I'd seen it before in other cases like Marilyn Manson. I knew how, especially in New York and California, things are so stacked against guys like Baldoni and people in his situation. But I wasn't expecting it to come so soon. I don't know why, but I wasn't. And so when that happened, when the judge dismissed, most of his claims, and then Friedman ended up withdrawing his lawsuit, like it shouldn't have been a surprise to me. It shouldn't have been demoralizing, but it really was a punch in the gut. And it was hard for me to keep making videos after that. Not that I didn't believe in Baldoni's innocence or that Blake Lively was, a lying sack of shit or whatever. I did. But it was just like, suddenly it wasn't fun making the videos anymore or talking about it. And so I had to think about that and whether I wanted to keep talking about this, even though it's helpful with the algorithm and it gets me a lot of new followers and stuff. But I just, life is short, time is precious, and I hadn't signed on for such a long commitment. And so again, not to sound pretentious, but it's just, the truth of it. And so I had to take some time and think about that. Do I want to keep covering this extensively? It was also, I have to say, kind of a punch in the gut to not be subpoenaed by Blake Lively. I know this sounds ridiculous, but I was genuinely disappointed to not get a subpoena. I felt like I'd failed. I know this sounds stupid, ridiculous. I really felt like I'd failed in some way. Like, I feel like I deserve to get a subpoena from Blake Lively. And so when that did not happen, I see like so many of my friends getting subpoenas. And I'm like, I know it sounds stupid, but it's true. Like I was bummed to not be in the arena with this. Like I felt like I was just like outside looking in, and you've got like Perez and Andy and some of these other people who are like in there like fighting the subpoena and stuff. And I'm like, I want to be there. I want to be there. So that was, a little bit disappointing to be left out of that. But anyway, and so for whatever reason, I could not make myself do this. I guess I just needed time away. The other thing is to look, I can say, as I do a lot, that I have a thick skin and a tough skin, and people's comments don't get to me and all that. And I do think I have a thick skin, and I do think that most of the time comments don't get to me. But it does wear you down, all of the online interactions and expectations. And I'm not even blaming people. It's just the nature of the beast. But so many, when you're online every day, you have so many negative interactions. And I try not to read the comments, but then it's like you have to read the comments too sometimes to like know what people are thinking. And it's like, oh, it's like almost like it feels like, look, it's not cancer or something, but it feels like sometimes like almost like you're in a bind. And so I just needed time away from that too. And so again, apologies, not interacting with comments, people wondering where I was and all of that. Like, I should have handled it better. I really should have, because I know some people were genuinely concerned, but I just needed to just completely get away from it, like completely, and get some perspective on it. And the whole thing several months ago too, like again, it sounds ridiculous, but the whole dust up over um, Deb and Hugh Jackman, and that one post that I did where I basically said, Deb Jackman was kind of fat and kind of frumpy, and how could she have like expected to hold on to a multimillionaire, hot movie star, letting her, quote unquote, letting herself go that way. That made a lot of people angry. And I was not expecting that. It's not so much that the reaction to it like shredded me up or whatever emotionally, but I just was totally not expecting it. So it did catch me off guard. And the thing with that, I know I offended some of you with that, and I still don't even know like how I feel about it. I don't know if I should be like defiant, like, well, that's how I feel, God damn it. You just need to face the reality, or if I should be contrite or whatever. I kind of like did both, honestly, at different times. But I genuinely did not expect that post to get the reaction that it did. It was like meant to be a throwaway post. The nature of the beast again is that you feel this pressure as a content creator to just put out provocative content every day. And so I put out provocative, satirical, some might say insulting comments, content about celebrities constantly. But for whatever reason, that really caught a lot of attention. Maybe because, there are a lot of women who were struggling with self-image and with weight issues and all of that. And so I really stepped in some shit there and did not expect it. And so even though I didn't think at the time that was really taking a toll on me, I think that was a little bit rough too. And I had people, messaging me saying, "I'm worried that you have bipolar disorder because you're posting things like this and all that." And of course, when they say that, I just laugh at them to their face. But then you think about it and you're like, man, that post upset people so much that they think I have like a mental illness because I was posting things like that. So you kind of just like all of it together. I was kind of just like, and the thing about the Deb thing, while I'm on the topic, I have to admit, I really do not know what it is like to struggle with a weight gain problem. And that's probably one reason why I used such sort of biting, extreme language when I was talking about her, which I think really offended a lot of people. I have, and I never talk about this online, but I have actually something, I don't want to call it a disease. That makes it sound so like, I don't know, serious, but it's a condition called gastroparesis. And what that means, and I've had it most of my life, my sister has it too. I guess it's genetic. What that means is that my stomach takes a long time to process food. So I have to struggle with being underweight. So I really don't know what it's like. I've always been skinny, and I always struggle to gain weight. I really don't know what it's like to have to deal with all of the self-image and self-esteem issues that come with being overweight. Or in Deb's case, people are saying, well, she's not overweight. So, okay, but whatever, a weight gain, postmenopause, whatever. So I didn't expect the reaction I was going to get. That wasn't obviously the main reason I was off social media, but there had just been like a number of things that had sort of built up, and I guess I just needed a break. And so it really took me like a month until now, until I felt like I was ready to go back online. So anyway, that's the long and the short of it. I don't have, there's not one thing in particular. It was just a number of things. But I have been planning to come back. I wanted to talk about the Marilyn Manson stuff. As some of you know, I've been working on a couple of like interesting sort of artistic promotional videos about him. And then the Blake Lively Baldoni stuff, I want to explain to you in a minute where I'm at with that, because having taken a break, I have given a lot of thought to that situation. And I think that I've come up with a pretty clear idea of where I want to go with that, with my coverage of that situation in the future. And so I want to talk to you about that as well. But that's what's been going on, and I'm doing okay. And again, thanks to people who checked in or who asked through, friends of a friend what's going on. And I appreciate that. And also the people who left me alone and all of that. But I am okay. And I'm back. Yeah. So and I also want to thank, let me just say one more thing. I also want to thank the people that are on the other side, so to speak. I was contacted by a number of Amber Heard and Blake Lively defenders, and even some big accounts that I used to fight with a lot and have fought with a lot online, asking if I was okay. And I responded to a couple of them. Most of them haven't responded to yet, but genuinely asking if I was okay. And so I do appreciate that. And look, I know that most of us, even people on the opposite team, so to speak, even ex-patriarch, really believe in what we're doing. And so even though there are so many times when I look at people across the aisle and I think, what the fuck are they thinking? How can they just not see what a lying sack of shit Blake Lively is? They do have their own perspective, and I really do think they're genuine in where they're coming from. I don't think they're paid shills either, any more than I'm a paid shill. So, anyways, I do appreciate some of those people checking in with me. But that is what is up. So I'm back, and I'm going to pick up with things. And so I want to talk to you tonight about several things. First of all, Megyn Kelly. If you don't know, and thank you to one of my supporters. You know who you are. I don't know if you want to be named or not, but one of my supporters who texted me and said, "Oh, congratulations on being mentioned on Megyn Kelly's show tonight. I had no idea. Thank you for letting me know." So I'm going to show this in a little while, but Megyn Kelly, she showed a clip from an interview that I did and months ago, and not only mentioned my channel, but actually spelled it out. Thank you so much for doing that. That's like above and beyond, Megyn Kelly. I don't know if you're going to see this or your assistant's going to see this or whatever, but actually spelled out my name. But thank you so much. And again, that was the timing there, the synchronicity there is great for reasons that I will talk about in just a minute. I really felt like that was a sign that I need to jump back into the game too. And so that's honestly Megyn Kelly, not to be too dramatic about it, but Megyn Kelly is why I am here streaming with you tonight, because her highlighting me on her show, it really was kind of a nudge that it's time to get back in the game. I was planning to anyway, but the time is now. And so just like Travis Kelce, finally deciding to propose to Taylor Swift. Sorry. I'm sorry. I am a Grinch about that. I'm sorry. I am, but I am a Grinch about that. Talk about that at the end. But just like that, I finally got the impetus to do this for Megyn Kelly. So thank you for that. So anyway, this is what I want to do. I need to go to the restroom real quick, get some water, and come back. I'll be back in like 2 minutes or less, and then we're going to start talking about all kinds of shit. I appreciate you, and I'll be right back. All right. Oops. All right, so I'm back. I do want to look at the super chat. See, we have one. Oh, where did it go? All right. So Jocelyn, hey, what's up, girl? Friend of mine. We missed your beautiful face. Thank you for that. I have been letting my hair go gray, not intentionally. Again, once I stepped away from the social media and from the YouTube, there was less incentive to keep coloring my hair. And so I am going to dye it because it doesn't look great on camera. But look at all that gray. You can really, skincare, good skincare aside, you can see the age in the hair. The hair does not lie. Look at all that gray. I'm about to turn 45. So my birthday is September 2nd. Like I said, Virgo. What's up, Dan Campbell? Dan Campbell, one of my big supporters, says, "Whoa, you snagged a Kelly interview. This is surreal." Yeah, we'll talk about the Megyn Kelly thing again, or in a moment. Again, what a great surprise tonight. But yeah, part of me would like to just go gray and see what it looks like. I think that gray hair, it looks when you have a whole head of gray hair, I think it looks really interesting. So I don't know. My guy doesn't seem to care one way or the other. But the only thing about it is that sometimes it does look bad on screen, depending on tonight the lighting. I think it looks okay, but sometimes it does look like you just took a bunch of powder and that Pablo Escobar got hold of your head or whatever. So, okay, so here's the plan. I don't want to be here all night, like I said. This is mostly for videos I'm going to put out in the next few days. But let's talk about Lively and Baldoni and where I'm at with that a little bit, and then Manson, and then that should be about it. And so, like I said, I was kind of, I hate to admit this, but I was kind of demoralized about the Baldoni thing. I mean, I still totally believe in his innocence or his righteousness or whatever term you want to use, and everything that I've been saying about Blake Lively, I still believe. But it's been tough to see some of the rulings, Judge Lyman or Lehman or whatever the fuck his name is, and some of the media coverage. And look, the judge was whining about Perez Hilton. The judge was whining about Perez Hilton, claiming that his court is unfair. Well, dude, I mean, suck it up. What a crybaby. What a fucking crybaby that judge is. Are you telling me, Judge, in all of the big shot cases that you have covered or that you have presided over, that you have not had people insult you or accuse you of things or whatever? Like, you've been through, like, you're in the political realm, you have been a lawyer for decades presumably, and you can't handle some blogger, some celebrity blogger calling you prejudiced or biased. Like, come on. So, like, to me, the fact that the judge even reprimanded Perez Hilton for that was really laughable. Like, to me, that was Judge Lyman tipping his hand and revealing inadvertently the fact that he does not have a very thick skin. And I just don't think he's a good judge. And so, look, whatever, he doesn't give a fuck what I say. And I wouldn't put this in an official court filing, but I do think he's biased in the sense that I think so many of these judges, particularly in states, left-leaning states, I'm not trying to get political. Yeah, I have a lot of left-leaning fans and stuff, right? But some of these left-leaning states, the judicial system, the judiciary has been brainwashed by this Me Too ideology. And I saw it in the Marilyn Manson case too. You had that judge complaining when Manson would file, when his team would file something, she would complain about how, oh, it was too much to read, and I'm just so tired from reading this long filing. Basically like saying like this, they're wasting my time. It was very clear if you read some of the filings. I'm not going to get on a tangent here, but if you read a number of the filings from the judge, some of the rulings in the Marilyn Manson case, it was very obvious that she did not take his defamation suit seriously. And he sued for other things, like Baldoni as well, but extortion, other stuff. It was very clear that the judge in that did not take it seriously. And I really think that this New York judge, Judge Lyman, that he's swallowed the same crock of shit that a lot of these people have, that false accusations of rape and sexual harassment are very rare. and that these types of defamation lawsuits, like that Baldoni filed and had to withdraw, that these are basically just retaliatory. And these poor victimized women, they're just being retaliated. These men are using the legal system to retaliate against them. Isn't it a shame? It's a shame that we even have to waste our time, reading these defamation lawsuits. I really think that's their attitude. So yeah, I do think the dude is biased in that sense. I don't think he's in bed with, metaphorically speaking, I don't think that Judge Lyman is in bed with Blake Lively or Ryan Reynolds financially, or WME or these studios, or no, I don't think that. No offense to those people who do. I think those are just conspiracy theories. I just think that he's ideologically brainwashed, like a lot of these lawyers and judges in the judicial system, and particularly in some of these left-leaning states like California and New York. California and New York are the worst for this kind of stuff. And so if you were coming at this ideologically at situations like Baldoni versus Lively, ideologically from the position that women almost never lie about this stuff, and that men are almost always predatory in these situations, then yeah, I do think you're biased. So, and for him to cry about it, basically, I just thought it was interesting that he took the time to call out someone like Perez Hilton. And this is no knock against Perez, but I'm just saying, you've got this like very esteemed judge in New York, this federal judge, and then you've got Perez Hilton, a celebrity blogger. And for the judge to actually take time to criticize or reprimand Perez Hilton, to me, it just shows, man, this must be really eating him up, this criticism that he's biased. Well, dude, I do think you're biased ideologically. I don't think that he took Baldoni's claims seriously. I understand, and I had the lawyer Omar on my show. I understand that Baldoni's team did not always do the best job with their legal filings, and I've been kind of frustrated about that, but whatever. But at the same time, I really don't think the judge gave Baldoni a fair hearing. I really don't. I think that he's always been probably internally dismissive of Baldoni's claims. So yeah, I do think there's bias there. But anyways, I don't know where I was going with all of that, except to say that yeah, it's been a disappointing last several months with the Baldoni thing. And so, and look, I'm also conflicted to a degree about Baldoni, not in the sense, I don't want people to misunderstand me, not in the sense that I think he's a great human being. I think he's a very like gentle, sweet soul, a lot of ways misunderstood. I think he's a very genuine family man and all of that. I don't mean that. But some of his ideology, I do think, particularly about the feminism and Me Too stuff prior to this, I think was kind of naive. And there's stuff that, looking into him at times, watching his podcasts and stuff, I kind of like roll my eyes and sigh about like, hey, come on, dude. But I do really think that he's a very good guy. And so at the end of the day, even though I may not identify as much with Baldoni as I would with someone like Johnny Depp or Marilyn Manson, right? I think that this is a really good, innocent guy that has been destroyed, or she's been attempted to destroy him by this predator, Blake Lively. And so one of the realizations that I've come to is that even though this situation is not something that I intended to spend so much of my life or so many months or years potentially on, that it really is something that I can't walk away from, because it is just the idea to me of Blake Lively, after what she has done and what she has attempted to do to Baldoni, not only Baldoni, but Jamie Heath and Wayfarer and a number of people in this whole studio. The idea of her getting away with that, walking away from that, it is just repugnant to me. She has to be in some ways publicly held to account. And so, if you ask me now, what do I think that we are doing as content creators? I think that it's about continuing to hold Blake Lively to account for what she has done and what she continues to do, putting out content that continues to draw attention to and expose the fact that this woman is still engaged in this kind of destructive, predatory behavior. And so there are lots of other things that one could cover, and and so forth. And to a degree, I do get the critique that some people have made that this is like rich white people's problems or whatever, right? It's joking, but this just cannot stand. And so I just can't walk away. I just cannot walk away from this situation and not see it through, at least to the trial and to the aftermath, the press coverage of the trial. I mean, there is going to be a trial, right? Still in March. And even though Baldoni is going to be on the defensive, right? It's Blake Lively's lawsuit that's being adjudicated. This is really just as much as Depp versus Heard. This is a real opportunity here to have the truth presented and adjudicated and so forth. And it will be a jury instead of a judge. And I do think that normal, everyday people will be able to see through Blake Lively, at least as they saw through Amber Heard. At least I hope. So that was one of the things that I've been thinking about. And so look, here's the conclusion that I've come to. I want to be as helpful to Baldoni's side and to the just side of this as possible. And I was thinking, what can I do with, my 100,000 subscribers? Wish it were larger, but also, it's a decent number. What can I do that will be kind of different from what other people are doing? Because we already have a ton of people, like Zach and Dana and Donna and Lauren and CJ and Leanne, a bunch of other people who are covering the day-to-day really, really well. And I just don't think that I need to be one more voice that's just covering the day-to-day of stuff. I mean, I'll talk about that in my videos, but what I want to do basically is what I did in the Depp versus Heard situation and the Manson situation and even the Andrew Cuomo Me Too hoax. I made some videos that basically were little mini documentaries that really zeroed in on examining the procession of events in these cases and the question of who was really at fault. And so I'm going to link to these below, but like, for instance, I did a 23-minute video in both the Depp versus Heard case and like the Cuomo case, and then also a 30-minute video in the Manson case, where I went through like very methodically, point by point by point, why the claims against them were false, and tried to sort of point by point, almost like a teacher, like a professor, right? Going point by point and trying to make a case for something. And I think that is something that I could do really effectively. That would be kind of a little bit different, a little bit of a niche compared to the day-by-day coverage of events that a lot of people are doing, or even the great project that Andy is working on. He's working on a full-scale documentary of this situation, and I don't have the resources or whatever to do that. But I would like to, I guess what I'm saying is, over the next 6 months with the Baldoni Blake Lively thing, I would like to make a documentary, very low def, very like guerrilla style, what have you, but a documentary series basically laying out the case against Blake Lively. And I think one of the things that has unfortunately happened lately with the Baldoni Lively fight is that there are just so many court filings and so many different accusations being slung around that people really sort of lose sight of the narrative and the timeline, right? And one of the things that Blake Lively is trying to convince people right now is that Baldoni is the one who initiated this war. In other words, Blake Lively would have us believe that, first of all, Baldoni and Heath and others, I guess, or Baldoni and Heath at least, were sexually harassing people on the set of It Ends With Us, and were behaving inappropriately, and were fostering a toxic work environment. And then in response to that, Blake Lively would like us to believe that then she complained about these things, and she got several other women, Isabel Ferrer, to complain about these things, and they presented these complaints. And of course, Baldoni and Heath, then faced with these complaints and the truth of their, their guilt, then had to admit, okay, we did this, we're never going to do this again. And they had to sign off on it. And then Blake Lively would have us believe that Baldoni and Heath and Wayfarer, fearing that their sexual harassment and their toxic workplace conduct would get out, then launched a kind of preemptive PR campaign against Blake Lively, involving Nathan and Abel and Jed and Jed Wallace and all that, right? that they launched this preemptive PR war, and that seeded then this tremendous outpouring of negativity against Blake Lively that we saw over that summer and that fall, right? Which Blake Lively believes is completely inorganic and just basically, made up out of thin air by Jed Wallace and, Abel and Nathan and Baldoni and Heath, right? And Steve Sarowitz. So that is her narrative. And I think what sort of gets confused in all the back and forth is the exact sort of timeline of things and what's really going on here. And what's really going on here, as we all know, is that you had this woman who basically tried to take over creative control with her husband backing her. Ryan Reynolds tried to take over, and Ari Emanuel and entire agency, right, tried to take over creative control of this film. Also, at the same time that she got deeply offended by some things that she misperceived about Baldoni. I think that weight comment really set her off. Whatever was said between Baldoni and the personal trainer, which I don't think Baldoni was in the wrong about at all, but whatever was said, speaking of Deb Jackman and weight sensitivity, whatever was said about Blake Lively's weight, again, even though we know that Baldoni had a bad back and he was worried about that and all that, whatever was said, that set her the fuck off. And how do we know that set her the fuck off? Because she and Ryan Reynolds chose to make that a focal point in their movie, the Deadpool movie. Because remember, that was one of the jokes about Baldoni Nicepool's character, is that he says something about her weight, critical of her weight, or whatever, right? That really stuck in Blake Lively's craw. So she must have really extreme weight sensitivity. And so whatever Baldoni said, and I'm sure that the personal trainer blew it out of proportion and made it a lot worse. Oh my God, you won't believe what Baldoni was saying. He was saying you were fat, and he's worried that he was going to break his back because you're so fucking fat. That's what Baldoni was saying. So, he says something to Blake and she freaks out because she's so overly sensitive about that. And then gets Ryan Reynolds freaked out and whatever. My point is that she had a lot of personal animosity toward Justin Baldoni. And I don't think that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds ever understood Baldoni either. I think that they could not understand a genuine person like him who genuinely has an interest in talking about things like gender relations and pornography addiction, et cetera, et cetera. I think that these two people, Lively and Reynolds, are so non-genuine that someone who's so genuine and guileless like Baldoni, they just completely misunderstood, and they think he's some creepy, weirdo, pervy guy who's faking this interest in feminism just to be this weirdo, right? So all of this together, it created this perfect storm. We talked about this before. I'm not going to go on about it here, but this happened, and then Blake Lively went on this campaign against Baldoni, and she had him barred from the premiere, and he and his family and friends were having to sit around in the basement, as you know, and she wouldn't do appearances with him and interviews with him. And so at this time, then the rumor mill starts, and people start using their brains and filling in the blanks, and they realize that there's tension here between Baldoni and Lively, and it's because Lively is this mean, bitchy narcissist backed by her narcissistic husband. So this was all completely organic. The dislike for Blake Lively, people early on caught on to what was going on here, and they recognized correctly who the villain was and is, and that it wasn't Baldoni, it was Blake Lively. And Blake Lively just can't deal with that. So she's trying to muddy the waters in a lot of ways. And I think that one thing that I can do is put out some really to the point mini documentaries, and maybe just a documentary series, really giving a sort of a tight narrative presentation of how this all came about. So that's one thing that I am going to be working on, that I'm going to do. And it's, like I said, a series of videos. The other thing is that I think that it's really important, again, to remind people of who Blake Lively is. And this is one reason why I loved what Megyn Kelly said tonight or today in her video where she referenced my interview. I think that it's really important to remember that this is someone, Blake Lively, and Ryan Reynolds, who have a very toxic history in Hollywood. And because Blake Lively is trying to make so much of this idea of a toxic workplace environment, and her supporters doing the same thing. Ex-patriarch, I look at his posts on Twitter, and I see that so many of them seem to be consumed with trying to prove that Baldoni and Heath and Wayfarer were fostering an unhealthy, toxic work environment. And so I really want to examine this idea of what a toxic workplace is. And I want us to look at how Blake Lively has behaved on other sets and in other situations, and also how she behaved in this situation. She was the toxic person. She was the one that fostered this toxic workplace environment. I want to get into that more, focus on that, because I think that when the trial rolls around, it will be important for people who are just getting into it, just like with Depp versus Heard, people who are late to the game, just getting into it, just starting to pay attention. It'll be important and helpful for them to have some online like resources or videos where they can say, okay, what exactly is going on here? And I want to just kind of lay it out for them. This is what happened. And this is why so many of us think that Blake Lively is the bad guy here. So anyway, I hope that makes sense to you. But yeah, so the first video that I'm going to put out tomorrow, and it's way overdue. And again, my apologies to my guest here, to my interview subject. But y'all remember that months ago, I did an interview with a former intern on Gossip Girl. He's a singer. He goes by the name Ewood, and he had been an intern on Gossip Girl, and he'd had some kind of negative experiences with Blake Lively. Well, there was something that he at the time was not comfortable talking about, because I think, it was early on, and I think there was a lot of sort of fear of like if Blake Lively would retaliate or whatever. But he actually had more extensive sort of interactions with Blake Lively, and has more to say actually about her treatment of him, or her interactions with him, and so forth. And so here's what's interesting. I guess it's late at night, but I'm trying to get to here is that it's interesting to me that Megyn Kelly chose to show some of my interview with this guy from months ago, because I just taped a month ago a follow-up interview with him where he was finally ready to talk about some of these other interactions with her that he had decided that he didn't want to get into early on, right? When we first talked, and he's like, well, there's stuff I don't really want to talk about. And so it's nothing like deep, dark or anything really. Basically, it turns out she was making fun of him some on set and so forth. But anyway, I had done an interview with this guy a month ago, and it's the first video that I've been wanting to put out when I came back. And so it's just interesting to me that the video that I've been planning as my first video back to present, it's with the same guy that Megyn Kelly was just talking about, right? So it's some interesting synchronicity there. She brought up that video, she brought up that interview, Megyn Kelly, she showed it, talked about it. So yeah, Megyn Kelly, I've got a follow-up to that I recorded a month ago and edited, and it's ready to go up. So I'm going to put that up tomorrow. First thing, this interview with this guy, again, a follow-up interview where he talks about some of these negative interactions that he had with Blake Lively. But the point is that she has had a lot of negative interactions with a lot of people. Candace Owens, I don't agree with her on everything, obviously, but not for nothing did Candace Owens say that when she worked as an intern at Glamour magazine years ago, her editor told her that the most notorious and most difficult celebrity to work with was Blake Lively. I've heard so many stories behind the scenes, off record, from people about Blake Lively. And I think there are probably a lot of the stories out there. And so I just want to encourage, and I will be encouraging on my channel, people to come forward who have had negative experiences with a toxic workplace environment fostered by Blake Lively. Because I really do think that she is projecting this toxic workplace thing onto Baldoni. You know how often people will project their own flaws onto other people. And she is intent on arguing that Justin Baldoni made her workplace toxic, when in fact, she's the very definition of that toxicity. And even the way that she treated Baldoni in all of this, it's very, very toxic. So I also want to do some videos that look into that more deeply, and really let's, Blake Lively wants to attack Baldoni. Let's look at who Blake Lively is a little more carefully here, and in kind of a more serious, almost kind of academic way. I really want to, by the time that the trial rolls around in March, I really want to have a kind of a library or a compendium of shorter videos that I've done, really getting into this question of who is Blake Lively, who is Justin Baldoni. because you get, if you look at his podcast and his interviews, you get a very clear sense of who he is. And it's someone who's extremely genuine, who is a very nice guy. I might say in some ways a little naive in some of his politics. I might be like, come on, dude. But like, I can't argue with the fact that with the notion that he appears to be a really genuine good guy who just got totally, I think, totally checkmated by this awful woman and her awful husband. So, anyway, so that's where I'm at on the Baldoni Blake Lively thing. So, in the coming weeks and months, yes, I'll be talking about the day to day news and updates, but I will be putting out videos that really get into sort of establishing a case for Justin Baldoni, a case against Blake Lively, in the way that I've done for some of these other figures that I've covered. All right. Okay, so we are getting up to almost an hour here, and I still want to talk about Marilyn Manson, and I want to talk about Taylor Swift just briefly, and then I'll look at some of, if I feel up to it, hopefully, I'll look at some of your comments and questions as well. So I'm going to take a, as I do on my live streams, I'm going to take a 5-minute break, and I will be back for people who are up late, want to stick around, no pressure. And we'll be back to talk about Manson stuff and some other celebrity things. All right. I will be back.
in the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni legal battle. This is a case in which Blake Lively, an extraordinary update for you in the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni legal battle. This is a case in which Blake Lively accuses her co-star from the movie It Ends With Us, Justin Baldoni, who is also the creator of this movie. He's the one who optioned the book and had the idea for it to begin with, of sexual harassment and disparagement. Baldoni cross-claimed, saying Lively is a nasty bully who is unfairly blaming and disparaging him for the negative press she generated with her disastrous promo tour around the release of their movie back in August 2024. News broke in July that Lively had begun sending subpoenas to podcasters and others who had said or written negative things about her, from Candace Owens and Perez Hilton to people you've likely never heard of, like Zach Peters. She targeted more than a dozen journalists and online creators, igniting a free speech firestorm. We can now reveal that we were among those targeted by Blake Lively. Yes, she actually tried to get the confidential and proprietary materials my team and I used for any and all stories about her. Because Blake Lively was unable to fathom that yours truly had developed a genuine revulsion toward her on my own, she posited that I must have been ensnared in Baldoni's alleged ongoing smear campaign against her, that his attorney, who happens also to be my own from well before his representation of Baldoni, must be controlling our coverage. In addition, she suggested that I was getting paid by Baldoni or by his lawyer, Brian Friedman, for my anti-Blake coverage, demanding to see all documents reflecting this alleged agreement or payment structure. This is how narcissistic this woman is. She actually thinks I needed to get paid by Baldoni's team to say negative things about her. Newsflash, Blake. I came to those conclusions totally organically. Don't give away your power, sweetheart. It was you. It was all you who made me unable to stand you. No man had anything to do with it. We fought her subpoena and won. She backed down and has now missed the deadline to pursue her harassment of me and my team any further. Sorry, sweetheart, you might want to try harder the next time. But in any event, we gave her absolutely nothing. Not one document, not one record, not one communication. In no world would I ever allow my teams or my communications with each other or with our sources for our news reporting to be turned over to a third party, and certainly not to this nitwit. It's called the First Amendment, freedom of the press. She has zero right to nose around in how I gather news or in how my team and I prepare for any show we do. Pro tip, we're extremely fair. We are extremely thorough, factual, and unsparing of any public figure, and frankly, of ourselves when it comes to our own high standards. But access to our actual communications, it's a no. You cannot have them. I am a member of the press. You are a sad, pathetic, untalented, narcissistic bully. And I will never back down to the likes of Blake Lively. Never. And her fight to harass me and my team ended in her getting nothing. Nothing. However, there are still many content creators whom we believe are actively being bullied by Blake Lively to this day. We were in the fortunate position of being able to hire a lawyer to tell Lively to pound sand. Most of the people she's harassing do not have those resources, and she knows it. She's targeting them because she knows she can. She's richer, better connected, with high-powered lawyers who have nothing but time and billable hours on their hands, thanks to Ryan Reynolds' booze and acting fortunes.
I'm at the last resort. I've lost a failing temporary that in my front. It's shattered. It's gone. I've also broken my other two front ones, and I'm missing so many teeth. So it's time to fix it.
These two Hollywood mega millionaires think nothing of harassing powerless people on social media who have the temerity to write or speak negatively about Queen Blake. Remember that. The next time you see Ryan Reynolds trying to pawn himself off as the super nice guy, aw shucks, as he tries to blow apart the lives of these content creators who happen to think she's a liar. He's a bully too. So while we at the Megyn Kelly Show are not worried at all about Blake Lively's attempt to harass us, we are concerned about this ugly bully's efforts to embarrass other online creators with fewer resources. And we sincerely hope the judge in this case will send a message to Lively and her legal team that they have overreached. It's ironic, of course, that in an effort to disprove that she's an unlikable bully brat who did not deserve any of the negative press she received, Blake Lively acts like an unlikable bully brat who cannot believe any of that negative press could possibly be genuine. So I will just say this. I came to this case entirely open-minded. Go back and look at the first interview I ever did on this case of Brian Friedman, who is Baldoni's lawyer. It was probing. I raised many of her defenses. We talked about the Me Too stuff, all of it. And I underscored to the audience that I don't have a horse in this race at all. I had nothing against her. It was not until I saw how many allegations she clearly made up and reached the independent conclusion, as someone who practiced law for a decade and has been in journalism for 2 more, that she was glomming onto the Me Too movement to try to save her reputation, that I finally realized she's a terrible person. Then I started looking at clips, in particular the clips that had generated such negative coverage of her last summer, and saw that I was actually quite late to the Blake Lively is terrible party. Clips like this one, where she bullied a reporter with no power after the journalist had the nerve to compliment Blake's very obviously pregnant state.
First of all, congrats on your little bump.
Congrats on your little bump.
Did you guys love wearing those kind of clothes that you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, working in
Everyone
digital.
wants to talk about the clothes, but I wonder if they would ask the men about the clothes.
I would.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's not just the women that have the clothes.
But
I feel like the women
Victoria-
get the conversation.
So absurd. So that the reporter wasn't pregnant. She was belittled and she did feel insulted and she spoke out about it after the fact. But Blake Lively couldn't be asked about the very obvious baby bump. It's called being a reporter, because let me tell you, when you're a reporter and there's something glaringly obvious about the person who you're interviewing, whether it's multiple nose rings or a large baby bump, you call attention to it to get it out of the audience's mind so then you can move forward and have a real exchange. And as if Blake Lively thinks talking about fashion is insulting or sexist, she's constantly pushing it on us on her social media. She's so proud of her stupid floral theme she's always wearing. She was pissed that she got asked about her baby bump by this reporter because she gets pissed at everything. She's always the victim, even when she's the one with all the power, all the money, and all the ability to walk out of the interview. She didn't have to agree to it. By the way, she was once again effing up her promo tour. So since then, Blake Lively's been accused by many people of bullying them, including a woman named Barbara Sussman, an assistant director who worked with Lively on the set of the movie A Simple Favor. Barbara posted online that Lively, quote, was cruel to many on that set, adding, quote, I cried my way home many nights because you try so hard to please someone who is never pleased and puts you down constantly. Think about this. Blake Lively's a star of this movie. This woman was the 4th AD. She has no power. She's low on the totem pole. She's working her way up in Hollywood, and Blake Lively treats her like shit. The mark of one's character is how you can treat someone who can do nothing for you. Nothing for you. Somebody very wise once told me that, and it's really true. And Barbara said Blake Lively's treatment of her was the, quote, reason I quit being an AD. And while she did not specifically name Blake Lively in her posts complaining, she later linked to a Perez Hilton YouTube post in which he surmised that Barbara was indeed talking about Blake. Then an intern who goes by the name of Ewood on the show that made Lively a star, Gossip Girl, similarly came out publicly to say that there too, Lively was a bully to staff and nasty to her fans to boot, noting that unlike Leighton Meester, who would pose for photographs with adoring fans who came by the set, Lively never would. Here's how he put it, quote, I noticed a stark contrast between the lead actresses. Blake often displayed mean, bullying behavior disguised as jokes, very passive-aggressive. On the other hand, Leighton was consistently lovely to everyone, even fans. He actually gave an interview doubling down on those allegations.
Hi, I'm Brett.
And I'm Jonathan.
This is Darla.
Thing is, so I saw Leighton and she was very nice. I just say hi and that's it. And when I saw Blake, I say hi. She didn't reply to me.
I actually hate the resolution in this and the way I look. It's, I don't know why it was so fuzzy. I had some bad technical stuff going on that day, but whatever. I'm not going to complain. Megyn Kelly is showing my interview on her show. So anyway, continue with this. It's not very long. And then
I think when she saw me, it was like, I'm nothing, so she's not going to acknowledge me, or even trying to look at me or anything. My thing was like, well, that's strange because I was not acting like a fan, I was just like doing my job. And because I just saw Leighton before and just say hi, and she was so, I don't know, like her smile and she was just amazing. Like she just made the experience better. When I saw Blake, she was just not nice. It was very passive aggressive behavior. The way she was talking to other people, it was not nice. I just pretend nothing happened and, but she was very rude. And just the way she was talking to people around, it was just like the kind of people just don't want to be around that kind of person. Just the way she was acting, towards people, just the way she was talking to people, the way she was she was not welcoming, and there was like a major difference when I saw Leighton.
That was on the Colonel Kurtz KURTZ YouTube channel. So maybe Ewood there.
dude, she actually spelled it out. Thank you so much. If you see this, Megyn Kelly, I really appreciate that because not only did you cite me, but you spelled it. Thank you so much. And so, look, neither I nor my interview subject, Ewood, were trying to say that this was some huge revelation about Blake Lively. Basically, he was just saying she seemed rude and standoffish. But I did do a follow-up interview with him a month ago where he was ready to talk about a couple of things that he had mentioned to me months ago, but said he wasn't ready to go on record about. And so anyway, I'm going to show some clips of that. So Megyn Kelly, if you happen to see this, here's a little more about that story than you were privy to. And you may even want to have this guy on your show. I don't know. I'm sure he would be willing to talk to you. But I just have to believe that if Blake Lively was such a nightmare that Candace Owens had heard through the grapevine that she was the most difficult celebrity to work with. If she was that much of a nightmare, I just have to believe there are tons of other stories out there. I mean, there's, Jamie, that internist who interned on a different film or for a different company. Jamie talked about her negative experience with Blake Lively. Months ago, I just have to believe that there are many other people, and Ariadna Jacob, my friend, who was a big TikTok agent and in Hollywood for many years, she said that she had heard stories about Blake Lively also freaking out on assistants and having meltdowns on sets and at photo shoots and stuff. So anyway, here's the point. Nobody would care about this stuff, Blake Lively, except that you have made an issue of this question of toxic of someone fostering a toxic workplace environment. So since you have brought this up now, since you are accusing Baldoni of this on such a frivolous basis and on a duplicitous basis as well, you have lied about a number of things. Since you're doing this, then okay, I think it's only fair for people to look at your history and on different sets and different movies and the kind of attitude or environment that you foster there. So, and one more thing I want to say before I get into the Marilyn Manson stuff. Blake Lively, this is something else that I think has gotten lost in the day-to-day debate over court filings and updates. Blake Lively flat out lied about a number of things early on. She told demonstrably, provably false lies about Justin Baldoni and about Wayfarer and about what went on that set. And I think a lot of people have forgotten about this or have lost sight of this. And to me, again, this goes to the heart of the case and of her character. And to me, this is one of the most exculpatory factors in the case of Baldoni, is that we can go back and we can look at that initial complaint that she filed with the California Civil Rights Commission. And we can see where early on she was floating a number of flat out lies that were later disproven by hard evidence. And for example, the stuff that we saw on that video where Baldoni and Blake Lively were filming that dance scene, right? What, 10-minute video where they're talking and interacting and they're, pretending to dance and everything. Well, early on in her initial complaint to the California Civil Rights Commission, she claimed things went on during that shoot that when you look at the video, you plainly see did not happen. She lied about when Baldoni made a comment about how she smelled good or what she was wearing smelled good. The way that she presented it in her initial filing was that it sort of came out of nowhere and that he was being really creepy about it. Well, you come to find out that that comment was part of a more extensive conversation that she had initiated about what makeup or stuff that they were wearing that might give off an odor. And the point is, she left out a bunch of context and she lied about it. And there were numerous instances of that just in that video alone. And there were things that she had to change her story about, that she had to rephrase or represent or rewrite when she ended up filing her lawsuit because she had lied about it the first time. So I think that some of this stuff that's really damning and damaging for Blake Lively, I think that some of it's kind of getting lost in the day-to-day. It's not anyone's fault or anything. I'm not criticizing anyone's coverage. People have been providing amazing coverage. CJ and Leanne and Lauren and Zach and Donna and Ashley. I know I'm going to leave out a bunch of people, but even though I've not been interacting online and not been online very much, like I still see these are the major players who are putting out daily amazing informative updates. And I couldn't do what I do, whatever I'm doing. I couldn't do it without them. So kudos to those people, but I want to take a bit of a different tack and approach. Since I've decided I'm going to stick with this, I'm going to keep covering it. I want to do something that will be a little bit different and might be uniquely helpful. And so again, that's why I'm talking about doing more of a series, sort of, I don't know how to even put it, but a very sort of professional in tone, serious presentation of the case against Blake Lively and in favor of Justin Baldoni. And also, like I said, getting into this question of who is Blake Lively and what is her history and everything. So more to come there. But again, thanks for the shout out, Megyn Kelly. I don't think that you realized this or could have known this, but it came at a really important time for me when I am trying to get back out there. And I've been sort of wavering as to whether I wanted to continue to cover this story. And so the fact that you chose to highlight that interview with my friend Ewood, when in fact that was the first video I was planning to put out when I came back, was the follow-up with him. I think there's really some synchronicity there. And so thank you again, and check out the follow-up because he has some other things to say about her and about his impression of her and his interactions with her. Okay, so more to come on that, at some point. Or more to come on that tomorrow, next week, and weeks to follow. Now, I want to talk a bit about Marilyn Manson stuff. It's almost 4:00. I need to wrap this up in a half an hour for my own health tomorrow because I do have to go to work as well. But the Marilyn Manson stuff, I mean, look, first of all, let me just say to a number of my followers and subscribers who are not interested in the Manson stuff, you're interested in Baldoni and Blake Lively. I just want to say again, I understand that at a distance, the Manson situation, it looks like sort of like, because you've got a number of women accusing him, whereas in Blake Lively's case, you've got one, if you count Isabel Ferrer, what a disaster zone that is with her. Man, I could go off on the Isabel Ferrer situation. I don't want to tonight. We don't have time. I definitely will address that in a video soon. Anyway, major eye roll about Isabel Ferrer. But the Manson thing, I know people look at that, some people, and they're like, there were too many women accusing him. And that image, I mean, you can't present yourself that way and not have something actually wrong with you deeply and all of that. I understand that like gut reaction or that feeling. But so much has come out in the 5 years, almost 5 years since these allegations came out against Manson. So much has come out about the case, about the accusers, particularly the primary accuser, but I mean, some of the others as well. I mean, you've got Bianca Elaine Kine out there who she's still doing interviews. She's just, as a number of you know, a few weeks ago, she did an interview with one of Jeffrey Epstein's accusers, and it got a lot of views, right? Like tens of thousands, 100,000 views, in which she, over the course of an hour or two, made her claims again against Marilyn Manson. And you've got people like her out there who have been in so many ways discredited. And like in her case, so discredited that even the documentary about Manson, that the hit job against him, that was seeking to basically promote her story about him, it had to put multiple disclaimers in this documentary saying basically, well, this woman's kind of full of shit, or she might be full of shit. Like when you're having to cut an interview with multiple disclaimers telling the audience, well, actually, she contradicted all of this in a prior interview, and we can't really prove this, and this is a little fishy and whatever. I mean, then there's really something wrong, right? But there are so many things that have come out about a number of the Manson accusers, and particularly, of course, Evan Rachel Wood, that are beyond concerning, that just really expose the fact that this is a sham. There's so many things that have come out that, again, I would just really sort of plead with my Baldoni and my Johnny Depp supporters who have not jumped on board the Manson thing to really take a close look at it and look at some of my videos and look at the work that other people like Justice for Marilyn Manson and the Marilyn Manson cases and others have done. But here's what's interesting to me about the turn that the Manson case has taken. Yes, he still has, first of all, the LADA announced, as you know, months ago, that no charges would be filed or pursued against him. But he still has a couple of civil cases on the docket, so to speak. He still has a couple of women who are suing him, one of whom, as I said, is completely discredited. So he's dealing with that, but he's out on tour. He is back on tour and just finished up a tour, not only in America, but overseas in Europe and Mexico. And he started a new one. And so, as a number of you know, some of you may not know this. Listen, this is really, I mean, this is just big, even if you don't give a shit about Marilyn Manson. Listen to this. Recently, Marilyn Manson was set to perform in Mexico. And there were a number of people protesting this because, again, a number of people don't know the truth on this and have the wrong impression about him. And there were a number of people protesting this, including like some cardinal or bishop in the Catholic Church. And the governor of a state in Mexico where Manson was set to perform, he was set to perform, he had been invited to perform at this state fair. So you can think of it like I'm in Texas, right? Like if Manson were invited to perform at the Texas State Fair. So he was invited to perform at the state fair in Mexico. And there were some people protesting. The governor of this state, like the official governor, be like Greg Abbott here, the governor of this state came out and made a declaration that not only was Marilyn Manson welcome in that state and that he would defend Manson's right to perform there, but that it was important that Manson perform there in the name of cultural fairness or cultural equity. And basically, this guy said that it's for too long now, artists have been accused of things that have not been proven, and they've been canceled based on mere accusations. And also that there's been a history of people mistrusting or attacking hard rockers. Like, for instance, in Mexico, there was a concert that was scheduled for Black Sabbath. I'm talking like decades ago, and it got shut down due to protests in the same place. And basically, this governor went on the record not only supporting Marilyn Manson's right to be there, but basically promoting the show. Come on, check it out. We're happy to have him. This governor actually met Marilyn Manson in person, took time out of his day. This politician, like a governor of a major state in Mexico, set up a meeting with Marilyn Manson. They met, like shook his hand and everything. Like it was just really kind of jaw dropping to see even from Mexico, which I know they're kind of out there and they've got their issues with cartels and stuff. But to see a major politician not only defending an artist's right to perform there, but avidly, actively welcoming him and promoting him. It's really fascinating. I don't understand the ins and outs of Mexican politics, but to me, this is something that was really interesting and surprising. But then here's the thing. Not only did Manson perform at this state fair, he drew a crowd. Now, we're not talking about just people who attended the state fair. We're talking about people who actually showed up for his performance, who were in the audience at this performance. He drew a crowd of 200,000 people in Mexico. Marilyn Manson had an audience of 200,000 people. Now, that is bigger than Taylor Swift gets. So my point is to say that it's culturally, politically, even historically, it's an interesting story. And it's also a sign that there is, at least in particular places like Mexico, there is a real fervor for Marilyn Manson as an artist. And of course, his shows in the US and in Europe have been very successful as well. But this was a major thing. 200,000 people showing up for a concert after you have a political fight over whether this guy should even be able to perform. And you've got the governor of a major state in Mexico stepping up and supporting him. It was really an unexpected story and really interesting. And I think that it really, I think that it's just an interesting sign of how far, and it should be a sign of encouragement to Marilyn Manson about how far he's come and how much still love and support and fanfare there is for him, honestly. So that's interesting. Now, the other thing I want to say is that there was a show in the UK that got shut down. Only one so far, but there have been some fringe kind of protests about Marilyn Manson performing in the UK. And of course, as a number of you know, particularly those of you who live in the UK, hold on one second. I'll be right back. I'm just gonna... I was trying. So there has been, let me just close the door here. There's been some protests to be expected because the UK, as a number of you know, it has a very, I would say, active, for lack of a better word, woke element. And there have been a number of kind of fringe elements and some quote unquote feminists in the British Parliament, so forth, that have expressed their displeasure with Marilyn Manson being allowed to do shows in the UK. And he's going to be in the UK this fall doing shows. And so unfortunately, in Brighton, the council there, the city council, who apparently owns the venue, so you've got, basically Manson was going to be performing in that situation, a government-owned venue. So because of that, the city council of Brighton was able to shut down the show. But that's the only one. His performances are going ahead in the UK this fall. And I would encourage any of my European or UK audience to go support him, go to these shows and send a message. And of course, there'll be great shows, anyway. But again, it's really, to me, it's really interesting. It's really exciting that here we are in 2025 and Marilyn Manson is still generating this kind of controversy. In 2 decades ago or whatever, it was Columbine, and people had this erroneous concept that he was connected somehow to Columbine, that he had and his ilk had inspired Columbine, when of course it turns out that they didn't, and the shooters weren't even fans of his. But that was a really interesting, controversial time. And so now we have this with these false Me Too claims. Again, Marilyn Manson is at the center of the cultural moment. He has, even decades later, he still manages to be a central part of the cultural zeitgeist, which I think is the really interesting thing about this Me Too stuff. Of course, it's bullshit. Of course, it's a delusion / scam / hoax by a bunch of disturbed and or attention seeking women. But beyond that, it's really a sign that Marilyn Manson, even decades later, is really still of the moment. And of course, he's putting out great music too. I just want to say, another thing too about him and about his recent work. If you have not heard his big release in 2024, it was his first released new single, and it was called "As Sick as the Secrets Within." I really think it is objectively, legitimately one of the top 10 best songs that was released in 2024, and I really like a number of the other songs on that album, but that one in particular. And I'm going to play some of it. I'm going to splice this in with another video I'm doing on him and on his recent work, but it's almost cinematic if you listen to it, particularly the intro. It's extremely catchy, and of course, it's got really interesting, meaningful lyrics. But I really think that that was a really amazing song, and I think it was a really solid album, even for someone like me who's not really a big music connoisseur, right? And so I just think that it's a really exciting time. I know that personally, let me put it this way. I know that personally, I had hoped that he would do some kind of big interview about everything that he's been through the last 4 or 5 years, that he would address this Me Too bullshit, that, he would maybe even write a book, and maybe he still will, who knows, right? I know that I had wished that he would do something more direct like that, but I will say that it has been interesting to see what has sort of developed around him and in response to him, even though he himself has remained quiet. It's interesting to see still the reaction that he sets off and the different sort of permutations of this. You had stories in Mexico about some people supposedly doing a hunger strike to keep Marilyn Manson out. And stuff. I don't even know if that's true. Someone left a cow's head, they cut off a cow's head, and they left the cow's head like in the street in front of the Catholic Church's office or something. I don't even remember, right? There was some wild stories and reporting coming out of Mexico weeks ago when he performed. But the point is, whether they're talking about Mexico or we're talking about the UK, it's really interesting to see that Marilyn Manson, even without trying now, without even giving an interview, is still able to generate so much cultural controversy. And I'm just really pleased to see that he's not being canceled, that these venues are almost entirely standing by him. You've got the governor of Mexico speaking out for this guy. I mean, it's really interesting. But it's he's still edgy. Look, if they're shutting your concerts down in the UK and you've got politicians, stupid idiot politicians, moaning about you in their council meetings, then you were definitely still relevant, right? So it's been interesting to see what has been happening around him, and again, it'll be interesting to see how things develop going forward. But anyway, so I'm going to be talking about that. And like I said, I did do a couple of sort of more artsy videos, kind of promo videos for his UK tour and also what happened in Mexico. So anyway, I'm going to attach them to this. In a month, he's going to be going to San Diego, apparently. I see that there are protesters who are planning, once again, just like they attempted a year ago in Los Angeles, protesters that are planning to protest outside San Diego. Oh man, I bet you'll get a lot of people. You might even get like a whole 5 people to do that. It's the same people. And you remember that I was there in LA and I filmed them and I interacted with them and they were so ridiculous. And do you remember that the police had to end up reprimanding them? I'm talking about these Manson protesters. The police had to end up reprimanding them because one of their people got violent. And I got all this on camera. It was great. Maybe I'll link to it below or you can look it up on my Manson playlist. But I went to this protest a year ago in LA. And you had a handful, like 10 supposed feminists out there protesting Manson. And one of their people got violent and roughed up a pro-Manson. It was just a Manson concert attendee. It was just someone who's trying to go to the concert. And these protesters were hassling him. And so he kind of turned around and started talking back to him, which is his right. And one of their people just came up and slammed him. Just like completely like unprovoked, just slammed this dude, assaulted him, And then the police, of course, they saw it, so they drive up and then they have to have this talk, of course, with the organizers. So it was hilarious. I just have to say, y'all, it was very satisfying and extremely hilarious to see supposed feminist protesters out there supposedly protesting violence, who themselves got violent and were reprimanded by the police. All of this, by the way, on camera in this video. I'll try to link to it below. Anyways, but that's going to happen in a month. I don't know. Maybe I should go to that too. San Diego is not that far. Go check it out. Anyway, so kudos to Marilyn Manson for that and for being still relevant and still stirring the shit. And kudos to that Mexican governor. I don't know. Maybe you guys just have more cojones over there because you're having to deal with like dangerous shit like cartels trying to like threaten you or bribe you or whatever, right? If you're like a Mexican politician, then you've got the cartels on your ass. And so I'm sure then it makes it easier to stand up to some stupid mob about Marilyn Manson. It's like, shit, I'm dealing with cartels here. Marilyn Manson ain't nothing. Oh my gosh. So, yeah, I guess so. That's it. So I'm glad to be back, and it is 4:15 here, so I should sign off. But like I said, I'm going to do a proper live stream in a few days. I'll do it for my birthday, which, like I said, is September 2nd, and then the video, again, the follow-up video to what Megyn Kelly showed with my friend Ewood. I'm going to post that today. And then some Manson videos after that, some Marilyn Manson stuff. And so anyway, again, sorry for the absence. I really do feel like it's really helped to clear my head. And going forward, I think I have maybe a different set of priorities, or not different, but maybe a new understanding of some of what I want to do in the next 6 months with these topics and also with other things. So I did say that I would talk about, or I would tell you my feelings real quick about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. Well, just a few things. I find it interesting how so many conservatives, political conservatives online, who I often agree with, but at times definitely don't agree with, how many of them are celebrating this as a win for their sort of trad values? Because to me, what it looks like is you've got a woman who focused on her career for the first 35 years of her life. And also, dated, serial monogamist, but like this was someone who spent her first 35 years, dating around and seeing what was out there or whatever, right? And now at the age of 35 is now settling down. To me, that is that's not exactly the trad trajectory. So that's kind of interesting. But I don't want to be like petty and mean. It's I know it's obviously great anytime anyone finds genuine love. I do have some skepticism though. Just for one thing, if you look at the type of women that Travis Kelce dated before Taylor Swift, it was a completely different type. So you kind of wonder, first of all, well, that's sort of interesting how Taylor Swift just happens to be a dramatic departure from established type. And then you also wonder how much are they, particularly Travis Kelce, how much are they really facing the reality of the situation? And this person is a real person, as opposed to the sort of aura or glow of like a, movie star, pop star, Taylor Swift, right? I mean, Travis Kelce is getting so much tremendous career advancement from his association with Taylor Swift. I'm not saying the dude does not feel love for her, but most romantic love, if not all, is to some large degree self-interested, right? And again, there's no shame in that per se, but recognizing that fact, Travis Kelce, I'm just not even sure that he even would know how he really feels about Taylor Swift when there's just such an aura of like all of these career and PR and media advantages to being with her and everything, right? It would be very hard to sort of know how you really feel about someone in that situation. And then to a degree, maybe even about her as well. Also, I don't like the way, and I can't even believe I'm really talking about this because even it just sounds silly to even talk about it, but I don't like the way that she treated some of her exes and writing these revelatory songs about them. For instance, Matt Healy, in the song that is clearly about him, the smallest man in the world, and she uses several identifiers, obvious identifiers in that to let you know exactly who she's talking about, down to the reference to the Jehovah's Witness suit that he likes to wear. She talks about in the song, she references the fact that this guy who's supposedly sober was trying to get pills from a mutual friend of a friend of theirs. Well, I'm thinking, okay, so Matt Healy has talked about his struggle with drugs and with particularly with opioids, and he at least claims to be sober in that sense. Not, I mean, I know he drinks wine and stuff like that, but he claims to be sober in that sense. Is it really? Is it a good thing of Taylor Swift to be potentially outing him to everybody as a liar? Like, is that, it's one thing if it's like a family intervention, but really, I think that's a really shitty thing to do, to basically tell everyone, hey, this guy who claims that he's sober, he's been trying to cop pills from a friend of mine. Come on. That's petty. I don't like that. I don't think that's a good girl way of handling things. And then even the songs about Joe Alwyn, she basically blames their breakup on the fact that that he was depressed, and for her, he couldn't match her cheerful disposition on the world, and she lost all of her color when she was with him. And she wrote a line in one of the songs that, I think it was So Long London, that he sacrificed their love to the altar of his bluest days, basically saying, like, dude, you were just too depressed for me. Well, Taylor, maybe you're just too superficial, like high school bubblegum mentality, to appreciate someone who has a sort of more intellectual or darker view of the world. I don't know. But do you really need to be talking about this dude's clinical depression and how it was such a drag for you? Like, to me, it's like, can't you write about other shit? Do you have to tear down all of these guys in your music? So I don't know. To me, that's a bit of a tell that maybe she's not quite as nice and sweet as she pretends to be. And so I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know what I think about her, but we will see. But I will say that in any kind of romantic love, in the first year or two, at least the first year, you're just not dealing with reality. You were dealing with fantasy. And this goes for normal people even. But it's much, much more true. It's doubly, triply, quadruply true when we're talking about movie stars and football stars and major media figures. When you get media and PR and financial stuff, incentives involved, and you've got all of this attention, you're getting all this positive attention because of your relationship, it's really almost impossible to know if your feelings are real, if they're grounded on something real, or if you're just lost in a fantasy. So it will be interesting to see how things proceed for them. But anyway, all right, I'm going to keep this up a little bit longer and then pull it, and I'll edit some videos coming out this next day or so. And I appreciate all of you. And again, comments and discussion and stuff we'll save for the next live stream. So I'll see you on my birthday, September 2nd. I'll be doing a live stream, and I'll really try to interact and really focus on the comments and the chats and stuff a lot more. But I appreciate y'all. And yeah, I guess that's it. Check out my links below, and I will see you later. And I'm sorry, Blake Lively and Evan Rachel Wood, but she's back. That's right. I am back, and I will see y'all later. Bye.